Hi, and welcome to the Planet Driven Brands podcast. In this show, we will be discussing with our guests how brands they represent can help in the drive to build a better, more sustainable and safer planet. We will highlight brands as drivers for change and the role they play as influencers. How will brands positively impact the planet and its environment? This is what we're going to find out. Do brands actually have any responsibility to change? Planet Driven Brands podcast. Episode 23. Today's guest is Mike Ward. We're going to be talking about sustainability and film, TV and advertising production. Hi Mike, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on the show. I wonder if you could just give us a quick introduction.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Nick, and thanks for having me. I'm Mike Ward. I head up marketing for a platform called Singular.Live, which is a new industry standard for broadcast quality graphics and engagement. It's all done from a web browser.
Wow. I know you're a passionate advocate for sustainability in live production. I'm going to take one step back and say, what is happening in the world of branding, especially in regards to getting consumers involved in brands and sustainability?
Big question. I think it's something that I am learning about constantly at the moment. So by virtue of what we do and what I've done for the last 20 odd years in live production, without really being aware of it or conscious of it, we were right in the middle of live productions, and we do everything from the Super Bowl to Formula One. And we see all these massive trucks going all around the world with all this kit and hardware to produce these events. And I think as an industry, everyone was very much of the, look, this is just how it has to be done, because there are certain requirements and demands from the viewer side all the way through to the broadcasters. Really, I think there were people, there were corporations, there were entities who were making efforts to change things. People like Albert. It's an organization founded by BAFTA who do a huge amount around sustainability in live production. They were very much initially focused on things like series and thematic events, whereas we work very much more on event and live sport and news type stuff. I suppose, like many things, it got accelerated through COVID in that people were then suddenly trying new technologies that they weren't trying before. And in tandem with that, there was already a kind of push for more people to be more conscious about how they were producing live content. Entirely sort of fortuitously in many ways. At the same time, we'd been developing Singular, which is a cloud-based platform, which contrasts with the traditional tools that we were using and still use, which are very, very good at what they do, but they're all hardware-based. So you need dedicated hardware. So if you take an example like Sky in the UK. Now, Sky in the UK are they're really one of the forefront people in terms of trying to make things more sustainable, and they've set themselves some very, very big commitments. But I think part of that came from a realization that when they were producing live Formula One events, for example, they were shipping over 20 tons of hardware around the world to produce that. Now, that has a big impact. But in addition, you have all the people. They would, depending on the event, they might fly 75 different people to that event as well. Plus, you're accommodating them. There are so many aspects that they became very aware of that they needed to address. And credit to them, they really have done. They've made huge efforts, and they have a lady whose sole responsibility now is sustainable production, how they can make their productions more sustainable.
What I'm seeing is really, really interesting is this seems to have been driven by the broadcasters themselves. Are they all engaged in it now?
No, they're not, but they are increasingly so. And it's really interesting, actually, because it is a lot, it's being driven a lot internally, but also I think what I've seen is that actually often it is an individual in a particular department at a company who really makes it their kind of mission to try and improve things. They acknowledge that, yes, there are frustrations and limitations because, companies have objectives and shareholders and all other kind of factors. But actually, when you have an individual or a small team of individuals that are really passionate about it and want to drive change, they'll find other voices that will support them and that will help them. And that, I think, has been part of it. But then there is this whole value chain. So again, I'll sort of revert back to the example of Sky, but Sky work with a huge number of third-party contractors, who will do their productions, who will provide all different elements. And now, because of the work of a few of the individuals at Sky pushing this agenda, now when they send out a kind of a request for proposal, it will have an aspect of it that says, we need to know about your sustainability. You have to meet certain targets, or at least have a roadmap to meet certain targets. And not without just sort of making it a big stick that they beat people with. They'll say, we'll help you, we'll support you to do that, but it is important to us that you do that.
So how does it get done?
So there's a couple of main ways, I suppose. One is what's called remote production. So that is simply saying, do all of these people and all of this kit need to be on site at every event? And the reality is, no, they don't. It's very rare that you need all of those. So most live productions now, certainly around sport, will be looking at or actively sort of undertaking some aspect of remote production. We've been doing stuff with Eredivisie in the Netherlands, their football league. They've had the remote graphics production for about 7 or 8 years now. So rather than sending all of your graphics operators to every event, you just feed the video signal back to a central hub where they all add graphics. Yes, there's still hardware being used in that instance, but you don't have all the traveling and the shipping. That just stops. And the more of that you can do more and more of that. So have more people based at a central location. And the other part of it, I suppose, so you've got the remote production, and then it's actually sort of eliminating the hardware as much as you can. Obviously, from our side of things, with a cloud-based or web-based platform, you don't need any dedicated hardware.
Explain it to me then, because
okay,
I'm an idiot. I know nothing. Let's do it that way.
So essentially, when we do a sort of traditional production, there are lots of really powerful computers called character generators that you would use to do your graphics. But you're pretty much hardware dependent in that you will have a particular specification computer, which is usually quite a high-end computer. It will have a license, and those two have to be together. And so your operator, whether it is the person designing the graphics or then the person operating the graphics in the live environment, would need one of those computers and that license or the dongle. That's how it works. We've essentially replicated that, except it's just done through a web browser.
So the end consumer, watcher, viewer, would they even notice that their live production has been done completely differently?
No, they wouldn't. I mean, that's the reality of it. But I think it's interesting because you've got large broadcasters now who are making, and Sky are making very, very big commitments, along with others, BT Sport, the BBC, I know ITV are doing stuff. So they're all making commitments. And it's not necessarily something that the end viewer would know about. But if I, as a subscriber to Sky, do care about that, it's a kind of reassurance for me to know that these people are actually pushing it. It's very high on their agenda. They're leaders by example, So they're trying to change their industry, which, that's all we can really do, isn't it? Is impact the people and the sort of colleagues around us, and try and, if we all do that, then everything gets better, basically.
Sponsors, how engaged are they in this drive and in this change?
Again, it varies hugely. Some are very, very engaged. There's a whole range of different companies trying different things. You've got companies like Adidas who are now creating shoes from sea waste. So it's obviously something that, and I think we have to be realistic. There are lots of companies who do this because it's in the fabric of what they do and who they are as a brand. There are others who do it because they see there is a demand from younger consumers in particular about this. So it's marketing, it's good for the bottom line. Whatever the motivation is, the end result is it's good. It's good for us, it's good for the planet. As different industries become more engaged with sustainability, that impacts other industries. There are strong moves in retail around this. So if other industries see, oh, hang on, they're doing this in retail, we should be doing something like that as well. That's important to us. Within live broadcast, within production, what's really interesting, I think, is that the broadcasters, the kind of the vendors who produce platforms to create the content are all moving much more towards this, getting more on board, supporting it. But what really needs to happen to make a massive impact, a much, much bigger impact, is at the end consumer level. Because the vast kind of majority of the energy used in live content is at the end user. It's people having their TVs on standby. It's people having, because then you're talking about millions and millions of people. So ultimately, if you've got broadcasters who are pushing this agenda, you've got brands and athletes and personalities who are pushing the agenda. The weight of pressure will move to the set-top manufacturers, the TV manufacturers, to say, look,
turn me off.
Absolutely. If it's whether it's like with alcohol, they're all branded with a drink responsibly, notification now, and gambling is, when the fun stops. Maybe there does need to be some sort of consumer messaging of saying, hey, look, if you really want to help us address this, switch your TV off. And these days, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've sort of got an evolving, ever increasing number of those the internet connected plugs, just so I can turn lights off and things like that at the plug without having to go around my house switching all the plugs off. So maybe that's it. Maybe we get people to have some way in which they can switch it off at the plug. Who knows?
Now, Mike, I know you're really interested in the IBC, which you're going to explain exactly what it is now to us, but also in something they're championing, which is an innovation accelerator. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Absolutely. So the IBC is sort of one of the broadcast industry's biggest live events. It happens in Amsterdam every year. It's a really, really big event. One of the things they do is what they call the Innovations Accelerator. The idea is you bring together different people from across the industry who bring a different skill set, different expertise, and all kind of work together on a defined, specified project. So they invite all lots of suggestions and ideas. People then vote on which one they want to, which ones, it's usually about 6, which ones they want to get behind and support. And they then kind of get champions and contributors who all will sort of work on that project over a period of 3 to 4 months to have a proof of concept that is as far evolved as they can take it, to showcase what they've all been able to do together on a specific subject. So
it's sponsored theoretically by the whole of the industry.
Yes.
And is one of the lines in there, it must be contributing to sustainability goals, or is that
not yet? So not yet. So the one that I've actually proposed for this year, which they're supporting, is to is a sustainable production. So the idea is that when you do a live production, there are all kinds of influences and impact that you have to consider. Number one, it has to be to a certain standard, so the viewers are happy with it. But what we're doing is flipping that and saying, okay, what about if we approached a live production and the number one kind of basis for the production was, let's make this as sustainable as we possibly can. So covering every element that we possibly can in that production. So, whether that's cameras all the way through to ingest and distribution, as many pieces of that puzzle as we can make more sustainable, or as sustainable as possible, we want to do that. And the idea then is to sort of take a traditional production. So again, I just, say there's a Premier League football match. This is how it's done traditionally. This is how we did it, with sustainability being the sort of primary motivation. Look at the differences in, the savings in carbon emissions and what have you. But also using that as a kind of blueprint to say to people, look, this is exactly how we did it. These are the tools we used. These are the techniques, etc. And you can pick and choose. Take any of these that are going to be relevant to you, that you can use in your own production, and adopt those, so that people have some sort of a roadmap as a way to improve what they're doing, but also to identify where there are gaps. So where we weren't able to make significant improvements in sustainability, that sort of then flags, well, look, this is an area we need to address because there isn't a better option there.
Absolutely. Mike, thanks so much for your time. It's been great having you on the show.
It's a pleasure. Nick, thank you very much. Brilliant. Great to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. All the best.
Cheers. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Great to talk the world of production. Really good. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. The Planet Driven Brands podcast is the brainchild and copyright of Nick Jones and is broadcast in partnership with theplanetsagency.com. Planets Agency is a partnership of consultants and communications experts who build planet-driven brands. During the series of shows, we'll be hearing from more experts, and we would love for you to be involved. Please do comment or come back to us with questions. We'll be happy to engage. If you wish to be notified when our episodes are broadcast, please subscribe on the website. If you'd like to be part of the show, we'd love to hear from you. We look forward to many more entertaining episodes. Thanks again for listening.